It may be wintertime, but we're thinking about fun in the summer sun on today's episode as we discuss some rumored Nintendo attractions coming to Universal Studios in the future. Then we're getting serious with our legal matters. Our case today revolves around a game night gone wrong. Is a game too complicated for a certain player, or is that player being a big old baby? We'll settle it. Check it out. What you are listening to is real. The parties involved are not cool. They are actual geeks with a case pending in the court of public opinion. The party's case has been dismissed, and the dispute will be settled here on our podcast. There will be no lawyers. There will be no witness testimony. The judge's decisions are final.
Hello, I'm Judge Ivan.
I'm Judge Jonathan, and this is Geeks on Trial. Today's case, a 2-camel race.
Welcome to Geeks on Trial. This is the podcast where we settle petty disputes between actual geeks over movies, video games, board games, and more. If you'd like to submit your own geeky case for a future episode, you can email us at geeksontrial@gmail.com. You can also support the show over at patreon.com/geeksontrial. For just $5 a month, you'll gain early access to both our audio and video episodes. Plus, you'll gain access to Geeks on Trial Sidebar, a bi-monthly show exclusive to Patreon. What do you think about that?
Pretty cool. We just put out a new one last week about what was it? Which one was it we put out? It wasn't the space one.
Let's see. We have the episodes that are out now. Our hotel and space. Is it? Would you move
coming
space?
Up. No, space is coming up.
I don't remember what the newest episode was.
That's not out yet. Oh, it's about movie remakes. It's about
which remake do you wish wasn't remade?
Yeah, movie remakes we like and don't like. It's real good stuff.
Spoiler alert, my brain doesn't work in that episode, and I just make up movies that never existed.
Right. Your brain works now, though. You kicked it into high gear for today's show.
Well,
you go out back to the barn, and old Dominic's out there, and he kicks you.
You ever been to Outback? Boy, I love me a bloomin' onion.
You know what's great about Outback Steakhouse? Seriously? Mm-hmm. There are no rules there.
It's true.
Anything goes. It's like international waters.
Yep. And
Murder,
when you're there,
trafficking,
your family.
Both are, yeah. Well, like if you want to.
Right. Have you ever been Outback from Outback?
We need to get into our pre-show discussion because we're wasting too much time.
Don't tell me what I need to get into or not get into. I'm talking about bloomin' onions.
This week we're talking about bloomin' onions, and we're talking about. Look, let's level with the people. There wasn't a lot of news to talk about this week. It's dry January.
It's oddly a very slow news month, which
it's the beginning of the year. People are tired. People are staying home. There's not that much going on. No. It's just a little light.
We blew our load all over Christmas to get everything out, and they have all the stuff all there.
Right. Why'd you have to do that?
Do what?
You didn't have to do that.
All
we are wasting too much time.
You know, why don't you tell me about theme parks?
There are some rumored things in the works for the Universal Studios parks that we're going to talk about. You know me, I'm a theme park. And just last year, I went to the Universal Studios in Japan, and I talked briefly about my visit to, don't worry about it. I talked briefly about my visit to the Nintendo park. And these announcements are Nintendo specific. Again, these are rumors, no confirmations.
Right. No confirmations.
But in addition to the Mario offerings they have now, and we also know there's a Donkey Kong section in the works at Universal Studios.
DK. Donkey Kong.
Mm-hmm. That's what it stands for. Yep. The rumor now is that there's 3 big Nintendo sections coming. The first one is Pokemon themed. There's already Pokemon stuff at some of these parks, but there might be some new Pokemon stuff taking the place. In America, this would replace the Simpsons area, which now is going to be, I think they're getting rid of soon because Disney got the rights back to,
that was the thing that surprised me. Is I guess, because Universal.
Let me get through all of them. Then you can save your comments for the end. There's more things to talk about. In Japan, it'd be replacing Spider-Man. The other things that rumored are a Zelda ride. And some kind of Zelda ride and probably a Zelda restaurant. We don't really know what, as well as a Luigi's Mansion attraction of some kind, probably some kind of a haunted house vacuum ride. Don't worry about that hand gesture. And you're that would be part of the Mario Land. To me, what's interesting about this is that I think all of these sound cool, but it sounds like they're not containing Nintendo necessarily to the Nintendo area of the parks. That these things would be spreading out further, like the Zelda region, the Pokemon region wouldn't be related to the Nintendo Mario region. Luigi's Mansion sounds like would. Again, rumored, but it kind of makes sense. You only have so much space in the park, and I guess they decided Nintendo's our big ticket here. Maybe we should spread it out. But you were saying about Pokemon and The Simpsons.
Oh, I could speak. I'm allowed to.
Yes, now is the time for your comments.
So yeah, I've heard the Simpsons area was like lackluster and not always the best area, or it depends on which theme park you went to, because I know like California might have been better than Florida or vice versa in different rides that they had and different attractions. But I was surprised that they were getting rid of the Simpsons, because it was big when it came. Like that was a big news article and big news item, but it makes sense. I guess there's probably a contract that's renewing, and Disney's like, okay, fine, you could have it at your park, but we want money.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting because for Marvel, the contracts in place still allow them to have Marvel at the Florida theme park,
right?
Even though Disney owns that. But Simpsons, I think Simpsons they bought before that. I don't know what their deals were with Simpsons. Like that was probably a temporary license from Fox,
right?
So yeah, they're taking it out. So, and I'm fine with that. I mean, the Simpsons ride in that area is okay, but it's not anything very special to
now,
me.
My thing is, why didn't Nintendo just like maybe buy another theme park that wasn't Universal and just kind of make a Nintendo theme park?
'Cause that costs a lot of money. When there's already people who know how to make theme parks, you let them do.
Well, no, but I meant like buy a Six Flags Great Adventure and just kind of take over something that's not really, doesn't have like a license to it, where like Universal has like specific things that like I feel like Nintendo taking it over is going to like, you know, pull away from different like they're literally getting rid of rides to fit Nintendo in.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what worked for Harry Potter.
Did they get rid of stuff for Harry Potter?
No, they built a whole new section, which is also what Nintendo did. It's only this is the first time we've heard of the possibility, but this happens all the time. Like rides get destroyed and rethemed all the time, so it's not like that unusual. And again, the Simpsons ride has been around forever. It was Back to the Future before that, so it's not like that. That wasn't new to begin with. And Zelda, they said, might be replacing an area in Islands of Adventure, which is like Poseidon's. I don't even know what the hell it is. It's not a thing anyone, I think, really cares that much about. I want to know, what would you like to see? You know, Nintendo's in place. It's coming to Florida next year. It's already in Hollywood and Japan. What's your dream edition, whether it be a Zelda ride or some other Nintendo property? What would you want to see them do?
Well, do they have a Mario Kart ride?
That's the main ride. Yeah,
that's the main ride, because that would be like that's the coolest thing. That's the because I don't know what they have.
That's your dream. So they already did it for you.
They already have my dream, because I would want to go down Rainbow Road in 3D. That would be amazing. And
I've done it twice.
I feel like it would make me vomit.
No, it won't make you do that. Well, maybe you.
Right.
You're kind of a weakling.
A little bit. But I'm trying to think what other Nintendo properties would they have the Donkey Kong, the Mario. Boy, I honestly don't know. They've seemed to like they're getting their big stuff. Maybe
Fake
like a
gamer.
Like an F-Zero ride.
Oh, well, hell yeah. Now you're talking my language. That's a good one. An F-Zero coaster of some kind.
That would be cool.
Flashing lights and crazy things.
It would go like
on.
ridiculously fast. It'd be like one of those like 120 mile an hour. I don't know what the fastest coaster is, but
I don't think they're that fast. That seems like it's dangerous. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Zelda, I would love it sounds like they were working on a Zelda boat ride / dark ride of some kind. That's what I want. I would love a Metroid attraction too. Ooh. I don't know if we'll ever get Metroid because it's not as big in Japan.
Right.
And it's a little like darker and spookier than some other Nintendo stuff, so I think it's a harder sell. But
you could do like
if the other rides do really well and they need more ideas, could happen.
You could also do like some rebranding, like take one of those plane rides and just make it like an
like Wii Sports or Pilot Wings.
Yeah, something like that, or like Star Fox.
Oh, Star Fox. That would be,
You could do a Star Fox, like because they could yeah, sure, they're going to make all their rides experiences, but you can basically take like an old carnival ride and just re-theme it and just have it do like barrel rolls as it going around, like stupid things like that. Because that's like that's the cool stuff,
That's the cool stuff.
But I wanted the Zelda Cafe. Like, are they going to have the you failed a cooking meal, or what were they called that? The
yeah, it's like, I don't know what it's called from Breath of the Wild. Like,
but it comes out blurry and
that would be pretty funny. Yes, they said they would. The idea was it might be. The rumor is that it might be inside of the Deku Tree.
That's
Deku
cool.
Tree restaurant. So there's some fun stuff you could do with that. Luigi's Mansion. If they do sort of a like they do with the Buzz Lightyear Men in Black rides, where you like are shooting ghosts with your little vacuum cleaner while you ride. That seems.
But
like
I could see them doing that only at like Halloween Horror Nights, because that would be cool interesting. Too. Just have it like only open certain times a year.
But then what is it the rest of the year? They'd have to have something.
Well, that would be interesting
unless
too.
It's a walkthrough, unless it's like a Luigi's Mansion maze, for instance.
Because a lot of these rides are just like projectors or screens as you're driving through somewhere that you can like Nintendo can just have like a make it a Pikmin ride, or that would be cool. But what would you do for a Pikmin ride?
Pikmin, you could do maybe like a playground, like a park you walk through, and you just like it looks like there's giants.
Yeah, I guess the Pikmin stuff would just be like the greenery, like just you're right,
more decorations,
the trees and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities.
Have a giant Duracell battery.
Right. It's not a Duracell battery anymore, actually. They lost
that was surprising that they made all that like real brand names. I'm like, that's not gonna be a thing for a while.
Well, the idea of reprinting that game digitally wasn't a thing that you would think of at that time.
But what else? What would you want? What is your like big thing that Nintendo Land doesn't have?
I think we named all the big ones. I mean, Zelda's the really obvious one. We haven't really talked about Pokemon, I guess, of what that could be like. And I don't really know. There's so many things you could do with Pokemon.
I guess what they could do in real life Pokemon Snap.
That's what.
Was that what you were going to say? Yeah.
Will and I were talking this weekend and said this exact same thing about, yes, if it was, you were on the ride and you had a little mini camera and you, at the end of the ride, you could print your pictures.
Okay. Think about this. You've been to Six Flags Great Adventure here in New Jersey. They have the drive-through safari. Right. Get rid of all the real animals.
Do they still have that?
They do.
I thought that was shut down for being inhumane or something.
Probably. And then they just went, nah. So, but you do that, but like have Pokemon in that. Like that's the kind of thing that would be cool. Like have it be like a drive-through. I mean, of course, there would be like a tram car or whatever going through, but that would be really cool.
I'm trying to think, how do you simulate like, catching or throwing a Pokemon on a? I don't know what you do for that for a ride. It
would have to be a cell phone based thing, or like like integrate like some kind of app into it or something weird.
Or you just say this ride is the dragon Pokemon. You ride on its back. It's a roller coaster. Right. Don't worry about it. Pikachu's electric thunder.
You just ride a bike through tall grass. That's the entire thing.
What about a water ride? We need a who's gonna get a good log flume?
What would be? I guess Donkey Kong with the pipes and stuff. That would be cool. But like, what other water-based Nintendo rides or Nintendo properties are there?
Endless Ocean.
I guess Zelda.
Yeah, Mario.
Well, Water Temple.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That people will love the Water Temple ride.
Right at time.
Very complicated. Difficulty getting in and out of that.
People die every year on that ride.
Yeah.
But I'm trying. Like, is there like a water themed game that Nintendo has? Because any of the Mario games with the pipes,
all their games have water levels. So there's not really I don't think there's one.
I guess they could just make a water slide that's just a giant green pipe.
Yeah, they could.
You start at one end and you come out the other end.
Yeah. Now you're talking about water. I'm thinking of like a log flume. You know what I mean? Not like a full on water ride.
Or like, I guess any of these rides can be like Tunnel to Love kind of thing, like those kind of like just boat ride.
That's the dark ride is my favorite kind of ride where you just go through scenes and with animatronics. That's what I want. The Smash Brothers ride. You just throw all that shit in there.
it's just a wrestling match. You just walk in there and beat the crap out of people. Yeah.
All right. We've talked about it enough. I'm excited I got to go see it, but the Florida one, it's still a year. I think when the Florida one opens, Donkey Kong opens with it. So it'll be bigger. Is
the Florida one the biggest park?
Yes, I think it is the biggest in terms of total square footage. Yeah,
right. Because there's nothing else in Florida. There's a space of
just swamp.
Right.
You got nothing but swamp. You could expand as much as you want.
Is there a good swamp Nintendo game that would?
So that's Metroid. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
It's pretty swampy in Metroid. You know what's a cheaper alternative to going to a theme park in another state?
I do, but I'll let you tell me.
Just staying at home playing a board game.
Yep.
That's all you need sometimes. Nice and simple.
Nice, simple board game.
Or is it?
Oh, no.
Today's case comes to us from the internet. You can find a link in our episode description. Our defendant today is Steve. Steve's a board game guy, and he attends a monthly game night at a friend's place. And at one of these game nights, he brings out the game Camel Up. For people who aren't familiar, this is a racing/betting game where you are betting on different camels who move via rolls of the dice and trying to predict which ones will get to the finish line first to score more points than your friends. It's kind of a party game if it's up to 8 players. That's why Steve chooses it. One of the players, however, in attendance, Bob, remarks that the game looks complicated. However, he reluctantly agrees to try it. Over the course of the game, Bob proceeds to take the exact same action every single turn of the game. Steve is annoyed by this because Bob doesn't seem to be considering any other strategy or action option on his turn, doesn't seem to really be taking in the rules of the game, and he feels that this is making the experience worse for the other players. Mm-hmm. Later, after this game night occurs, without any more incidents, Steve decides to host his own game night, declares that it's for more complicated games, posts an invite online. Bob comments and says, "Oh, you mean like that camel one?" To which Steve replies sarcastically, "Oh yeah, that friendly game recommended for players 8 and up." Now Steve is wondering, did he go too far? Was he a little bit too petty? Who's in the wrong here? As dual judges on Geeks on Trial, it's now our job to determine whether Bob did a bad job or if Steve bet on the wrong camel. The only thing I didn't like is I realized I used the word job right after that's always part of that. And it sounds, it's not as good to say job. So twice in a row like that. And ending on camel.
It was kind of like a very camel.
No, that part was good.
I didn't like it.
Well, instead of betting on the wrong horse, it's camel.
I don't think we should bet on either.
Oh, you think it's unethical?
It's unethical.
The first thing we need to figure out here. So, well, let's say this for people who don't know about the game Camel Up. Mm-hmm. The biggest debate around Camel Up is whether or not it's called Camel Up.
Is this a real debate? Like, is this like a thing that people are like actually call it the other name?
I think it's kind of real. I think it's sort of real.
I thought it was just our group being stupid.
At one point it was, no, it's not. There are others in the world who have had this debate.
Because isn't it technically, it looks on the box like it says Camel Cup?
Yeah, so in the original box art, which is actually, there's a new edition, doesn't look like this anymore. But in the original art, it's one C that's big, and then it says Amel and Up. And some people read it as if the C is supposed to be for both words for Camel Cup. And it's a race.
So it works.
So like the Camel Cup, the reason it's called Camel Up is because you can stack the camels in the game if they land on the same spot, so they go up.
Which, if you try to do that in real life, you're getting kicked. Camel.
If you can lift a camel in the first place high enough to get on another baby camels.
Baby. Oh.
Have you ever seen a baby camel? I bet they're cute.
Baby camel. Baby camel.
That's not an answer to my question. Really.
No, I've never seen a baby camel. I don't think they exist. I think they come out of the hump as full grown camel.
Yeah, I think they do come out of that hump. fully grown. We have both played Camel Up.
Actually, I've never seen a baby camel. Huh.
This is what I was trying to get at. I know it's weird, right?
Huh.
Why
well, I know what I'm doing tonight. This episode's going to be out late. I'm sorry, folks.
What are the zookeepers hiding from us?
Big Camel has been hiding these. Anyway,
Joe Camel.
I don't know the last time. I don't know the last time I played it though. It's been a long time.
It's been out for a while. This game. It's been around. I've always really liked it. I do think it's one of my favorite for as far as party games that can fit large groups of people, and it's a party game in the sense that it's silly and fun and fast paced, but it's not like it's not apples to apples. It's or even the Resistance, where these games that are so light and silly that they're more about just joking around. Like there is some it's chaotic and random, but there's
it's a real game. It's a real game that holds a lot of people and is lighter. Like I think the reason why we probably don't play it as much is this is like one of the earlier games up there with Catan that was like Camel Up is an older game in the realm of modern gaming.
Yes, in our timeline,
right. So like that was the game that I was like, oh, we have like 5 games. We're gonna play Camel Up a bunch of times, and you're right. That was the game that you pulled out when we had 6 to 8 people, or how many people that we have, because at the time there weren't many that would like. It's a good intro game for like the start of a game night before you put down, the Battlestar Galacticas or other heavy games, which I guess BSG was one of our early games too, right?
It was. Yeah. I think we've covered this.
We have. I'm trying to ask.
I understand. Remember. I don't know what that. I don't know. That's weird. The weird thing to say. I'm trying to ask, but
I'm trying to ask.
But yeah, and the fun again for people maybe who have no idea what this game is. I'll try to explain like why it's fun. But a big part of it is there's a big pyramid as the centerpiece, a cardboard pyramid, and it's filled with dice. And the way you determine how the camels move is you shake the pyramid up and you open up a slot at the bottom and one die falls out and you'll see, it's a green die on the number 3. That means the green camel moves up 3 spaces. Okay. And on your turn, you can either do that or you can bet on a camel you think is going to win, or you can bet on, I think if you think they're going to lose, there's like a couple other things you can bet on. I forget the exact mechanics, but the idea is you're trying to hedge your bets and you want to play it safe or go risky, because the earlier you vote, if you bet, if you're correct, you'll get more points for it.
Right.
Like if say, if you think the red camel's going to win and it's like the first turn of the game, that's very difficult to predict because there's so much chaos that can occur. But if you're right, you'll get a bunch of payout for it. You can also like add tokens to the track that can do things to the camels. So, and it sounds like from what Steve says, when Bob played this game, all he did every turn, he says he sat there for a minute thinking about it, and then he picked up the pyramid, pulled out a die, and that was his turn.
Now, but this is one of those games where it's like there are X amount of ways to do X amount of things to do on your turn. So there's really technically no wrong way to eat a Reese's.
A Reese's
in this sense.
Okay. Thanks for that.
So there's no wrong way to fine. If Bob wants to roll a die every time, he's not technically playing the game wrong, because that is one of your options to basically do the same thing. It's like, playing Monopoly. You can play Monopoly and just never buy anything. You're not going to do well, but you can do it.
This kind. What was our? It's been a while since we talked board games. I think it was the last time Will was on the show when we talked about the issue of whether or not you should try to stop a player from winning. Right. And I think we're gonna maybe come up against some adjacent territory here in terms of board game philosophies, where I think you are more forgiving, perhaps is the word, of you've got an easy going, hey, we're all like, you're not wrong. What you just said is absolutely not wrong.
Right.
This is you're absolutely, there's no requirement for you to do any other move. You're playing within the rules of the game. That's 100% correct.
Is it making the game enjoyable? Yes or no?
Like I'm trying to think of a broader example. Like if you played chess and all you ever did was move your pawns and no other pieces or something. It's like, because maybe you didn't know how the other ones worked, so you just go, well, pawn moves forward one.
Right.
That's probably, for the other player, that might not be that fun.
And that's the other section of this too. What you just said is you may not know. And I do think as the host of the game, whoever owns the game, puts it to the table, in my opinion, IMO is the host of the game. I think they take full responsibility of making sure everyone knows said game in some fashion or another.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe Bob doesn't know how to play the game.
Right.
So like at what point, Steve's annoyed at this, but at what point is Steve failing as the game host by not being like, hey, Bob, why don't you do this? Without also trying to play Bob's character.
Right.
Because you don't want to do that either. You don't want one person playing for every other person.
Well, here's perhaps another wrinkle, is that Bob was there with a partner of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
I won't assume their gender.
I'll assume business. It's their business partner.
Okay. And I will assume their race, but I'm not going to say out loud what I think it is.
Right. I assume a lot of things. I just don't say them out loud.
And supposedly the partner sort of was like, oh, I've played this before, or actually, yeah, this game's not that complicated. You should try it, when Bob was kind of reluctant.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a little bit is on them too. It does sound like either Steve was the only one who cared about this, or no one else noticed, or like nobody else, nobody was saying, hey, just so you know, like, again, to try to get people into the Camel Up mindset, like, basically what you're doing if you just drop a die every turn is you're only seeing, like, there's no agency involved in that action. It's a random die, and it's kind of like if eventually somebody has to do it. That's how the game progresses. But if you're not doing anything else, you're basically sitting back and making zero decisions the entire game.
The one good thing about that game is, the other option for Bob is just to sit and watch, which him doing this is sitting and watching advanced. He's just kind of, so I get it. If you don't want to play the game, but you also don't want to be the wallflower, you're just rolling the die. You're talking to the people, you're in the game, but you're not really in the game. It's like being the audience member in Jackbox.
You're like the moderator almost. You're the I will say another thing, a little bit in Bob's defense. Maybe they said they're playing with 8 people, and I think it's one thing if you were playing this game with maybe 4 or 5. I think you can play with 4 or 5 people, maybe even to 6 players. But 8 people is kind of a lot of people for any game. And in a game like this, where, like I said, it's pretty chaotic, it moves quick, lots of things are happening, it's hard for me to imagine one player doing this having that much of an impact on the game.
Right. And especially something where it's not like this roll is not affecting anyone else. Like, it's not, screwing up the next person's turn. It's not going to affect the end score. It's not going to affect really anything. It's just really affecting how they are enjoying it or not enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, what it affects, if we really are going to break this down, is
break it down.
Ideally, in a board game, what you want, and this is where maybe we're covering some old ground again, but I think you want everybody at the table to be trying to win, to make it an interesting game. Right. There is a is it Rainer Knizia? I think, a big board game designer.
Like tall?
He's like 8'3".
Wow, so really big. Okay.
Yes, he's in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Good for them.
Thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the blood circulation is a problem.
Oh.
Yeah, he's German. He has some quote about how what's important about it. It's important in a board game to try to win.
Mm.
It's not important to actually win. I'm paraphrasing and misquoting that.
Right.
But it's like,
Well, because it's hard to hear him. He's very tall.
He's
all the way
very
up.
tall. I can only tell you what I can gather. But the idea is, yeah, it makes a better experience if everybody doesn't care.
Then why are you
everybody
playing
at the table was not betting on camels, then the game wouldn't function.
Right.
Right. So it is one of those things, like in spirit, I disagree with what Bob is doing. Right. But I just am not totally sure if 1 out of 8 people do this. Because again, on average, you're probably going to be doing a lot of the dice rolling anyway with a group that big.
But if you're only doing that, but also like a lot of these games, like they say it's between, let's say 4 and 8. I don't know. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, like when there's actually 8 people playing, it's kind of broken to begin with because like, a lot of these games is like, oh yeah, it's meant for 12 people, but it's not, we just had to put that on there to get the sales. Like sometimes the games aren't that great with 12.
I'm looking it up on Board Game Geek. They have a rating. So Camel Up goes from 2 to 8 players. You can technically play 2. Yes. I don't know. It doesn't sound that good to me.
That just reminds me of the time you and I played, was it Catan? It was just you and I back and forth. And then halfway years ago, we were in college, right?
I don't know, but this was very, very early in our, like when we first started having board game nights.
Yeah.
We were still playing Catan, so that's how you know it was early. Yes. And we later learned that night. We learned
like halfway through the game, we're like, this doesn't seem right.
You're not supposed to play Catan with 2 players. Yeah, it's not even like it's not recommended. It doesn't.
Fast forward like 10 years, there's a 2-player Catan. So
right, there's a specific one. But if you think about it, and we were just so stupid at the time. Right.
Not one of us looked.
Catan is a trading game. If there's only 2 people, why would you ever trade?
Well, I
with
think
your
that's
opponent?
what ended up happening. Was like you're like, you want to trade? I'm like, why the fuck would I trade with you? And then you're like, right. And then you looked and you're like, huh, welp.
It's so stupid. But there's nothing in the like theoretically, like some games wouldn't even be possible. Like you couldn't even set it up.
Like the game worked.
Players. Yeah, like it's still it functions. It's just not balanced.
But isn't the most important part? We had fun. And that's what I'm getting to.
Well, I wanted to say on this point, BoardGameGeek.com allows you to the community votes and recommends the actual number of players they think it is good with. According to them, they say it is best with 4 to 5 players. However, they say like maximum 3 to 7. That like if you have at least 3 and probably cap it at 7, that's still a good time. That's
I feel like even 3 is.
I agree. I think even 4 to me, I almost kind of want 4
like
can work, but 5 is the fun spot.
I was thinking Camel Up is like a 6-player game. Like that's a good number, but yeah. So, I mean, really, Bob is he's just there.
Right. He's just an extra guy tacked on.
Right. But if he is enjoying him, it seems like Bob didn't want to play this game to begin with. Bob maybe isn't a gamer that we're getting at. Or, in the case file it says, they were playing lighter, like a Cards Against Humanity style game that they were more fine with, more of a social gathering thing than a game, where this might have been maybe his first larger scale game. But
sounds
he
like
was still doing it.
Yeah, this sounds like the action of a guy who, and I understand this for people who are new to board games. If you're a little intimidated and you're not sure what to do, you go for, you watch everyone else around the table and you're like, I don't really know what to bet on. I don't really know how that works. But what I do understand is pick up Pyramid Open Door.
Right. And you also it's also intimidating too, because you're playing with 8 people who potentially have played this before. So you don't want to look like a jackass who's like, oh, you've never played this baby game.
Right. Yeah. That can be scary. It can be scary. You don't want to look stupid.
I also get that kind of snobby gamer vibe from Steve, because at any moment, Steve could have been like, here, you can be playing like this. You could be doing this. Oh, why don't you try this? Or even the partner as well. But I mean, but in general, the person who owns the game or is putting the game on the table, like I said before. But, somebody could have been like, why don't you try this?
Do you get the snobby gamer vibe from me? Just asking.
Not usually.
All right, continue.
Yeah, only when we play Camel Up.
Yeah, this story actually came from a real life scenario.
I get a lot of snobby things from you from other things. Gamer vibe now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
Pro gamer. Yeah, you're a pro gamer. So, so Steve, rather than complain about it, why not try to help the situation?
Which, to be fair, he didn't make a scene. He didn't complain at the time. He didn't say you're ruining the game. He as far as the actual social event is concerned, he didn't speak up or
right.
So in fairness to him,
he didn't say anything.
He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything at that occasion.
But let's rewind to something you just said.
Okay.
Ruining the game. Do you think Bob was technically ruining this game?
As I've said, I think it's hard to imagine that he by himself could have, if everyone else is playing optimally and the way they're supposed to play, quote unquote, I find it difficult to imagine that it's making a big impact on the game at large. And
I would say that's true for most competitive games. Games where it's oh, fine, they're just going to lose. Not a co-op style game or anything like that where you need said person.
There are games it could happen. Again, if we're talking about a hidden trader game, for instance, and one person just tells you who they are or something,
right?
Then it's okay, you're not playing in the spirit of the game. That could actually ruin the game,
right?
This is not in this case. There's nothing you can really do like that. I don't think to literally ruin the game.
Right. Now, what do they call what is this level of game?
I was waiting for a joke. What do you call a camel who's late to the party?
What do you call? Because the big titles are what, triple A? No, that's sports.
That's video game. It's tow trucks. You're going different. They don't really have names for it. I'll say this. So, Steve is correct. Camel Up is recommended for ages 8 and up. The Board Game Geek complexity rating is about 1.5. That's a scale that goes from 0 to 5. So,
okay.
And Board Game Geek, you can assume those are heavy board gamers. So maybe you could round that up to a 2 out of 5, let's say. But it certainly is meant to be on the simpler side. It's a game that's the playtime is 20 to 30 minutes.
Right. That's cute, by the way.
Thank you. What's cute?
The time limits on these websites are cute.
Yeah, right. For us, it's 45 to 4 hours.
Right. Very big gap.
So let's take that and fast forward a little bit to this second invite thing too. What do you think about? So this is where this comes into play, huh? When Bob says, "Oh yeah, that Camel Up game, that was a complicated one," and this is when Steve decides, "I gotta rib this guy a little bit." Oh yeah, the one for ages 8 and up. Which let's be real. This is, as far as insults and arguments go, this is not the most cutting of. This is
no, but it's also we're
on a low stakes scenario here. I think before we get it, I just don't want to start calling this because I know we could start calling this a dick move, but let's step back and examine that this is a pretty harmless.
It is, but to say for this guy, this was maybe his first game,
right? Sure.
Steve didn't say shit at the table. It is an asshole text.
But you want, yeah, because I knew you were gonna, and I don't look. It's not like a great text.
No, and especially
I'm thinking Discord, but I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Oh, I'm just saying text as in general.
Yeah.
But it also seems like he might not know Bob well enough.
Oh yeah, I don't certain. Oh, I see what you're saying.
If it was us, we have said much worse things to each other.
Right.
Just before we even had our first cup of coffee. This is our go-to. But if this was just somebody that just showed up with a partner, okay, let's take this for example. I was we were all one of the original people of our game night, but I brought in
the OGs.
Danny. I brought in Danny a few years later, who was my partner.
It was a rough period.
He's not allowed to sit at the real table. He's not.
Nope, there's a kid's table for him.
So like
He's pretty
elderly.
young.
It's the elderly's table.
Is he?
The old people's table. He's 75.
Young.
He's 75.
Oh,
so
75.
Yeah.
I forgot the 70.
He's.
I wondered how you were allowed to do that. Honestly.
Well, why do you think we're never allowed in country?
So it was like a progeria thing where he just looked old.
So you wouldn't like, a person coming into a group, assuming all these other people game with each other often, you wouldn't just like randomly say, yeah, it wasn't that bad of a thing. Oh, you mean that one for 8? No, like that's not that bad of a thing in the right group.
You're right. When you're right, you're right.
Like you wouldn't, it's like when somebody's like at a dinner party and they drop something, oh, Butterfingers. Like, don't be that guy.
They dropped Butterfingers? What are they doing?
No, like,
candy at the dinner party.
Well, they're the asshole.
That's funny, right?
That's fine. I like that.
Okay.
I'll save that for my other show.
You're right.
My Butterfingers show.
Yeah, there is an issue in the board game community with, as there is in almost any hobby, with gatekeeping, right? That's a big controversial subject. The idea of not welcoming new gamers into the fold by potentially scaring them off with games that maybe you think are too complicated. A great example of this is the game Wingspan.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the most popular board games in the world now. And this is a game that people in the board game community, like myself, think of this game as being, oh, that's like a family medium weight great intro game. And then there's this great famous video. I think it was a TikTok of the actor Mandy Patinkin.
Yes.
It was like his daughter or someone in his family made a video of him and his wife. They were trying to learn how to play Wingspan, and you can see what people who don't know board games, how incredibly complicated we can take for granted how complex these things actually are.
Because think about it, we've been playing all this shit progressively. Like we started with the easier games, then we went to the next thing, So it's like we take for granted our past knowledge. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, you didn't interrupt that. That's same thing with video games where it's like, you play, we sit down and play a Mario game and it's like, yeah, I know exactly.
We skip through the rules.
I've played Mario games for 20 years. I understand when to
You're
jump.
fucking old.
I understand. I hold the run button with my thumb and I jump with my other part of my thumb.
Wait, I use my tongue.
That's the standard. But someone who comes into it new, they're like, the big thing for new players I always see with for 3D games is moving the camera. Is like, we take it for granted. Your right hand moves the right stick and you kind of move around. People who are new to games, that can throw them completely because they're not, their eye-hand coordination is not built up for that.
Right.
So yes, it's certainly, I will certainly grant you that Steve was not being very charitable in this instance.
Right.
From his perspective, I think, he feels like, that's the funny part of this to me, is that from his perspective, Bob was like ruined the game, and Steve's been like, feels like he's been holding this inside all this time, bubbling over with irritation, and finally he lashes out by going, "You mean the game for 8-year-olds?" It's like the lamest. Which
is also like at the same time, like, hey Steve, you're also playing the same game for 8-year-olds, bud. And also saying Camel Up is for 8-year-olds is like, I feel like an 8-year-old could play it, but it would be a little hard for an 8-year-old right off the bat.
Nowadays, 8-year-olds are stupider now.
They use the word stupider.
Yeah, that is a word. Stupider is a word.
It sounds stupid.
Was this off air? We had this conversation, or on air?
It might have not been me.
Stupid. I'm just saying, stupider is a word.
Okay.
All right.
Go get your dictionary.
It's not. Okay. It's not like funner is not a word.
Oh, well, I'll have to fight you on that one.
Girls do go to Jupiter to get more stupider.
Well, I need to bring gender into it.
I switched it. Usually it's
Why
the boys, but I'm reclaiming it. You know what? Girls, it's your turn to get stupider. We've had enough time on Jupiter.
That's true. We need to go to the other planet.
Now you're making me second guess if stupider's a word. I swear to
That's
Christ,
what I'm here for. So bring this back into, like I said, in our group, we throw these kind of things around. So yes, in theory, it's not a bad thing to be like, oh, you mean that game for 8-year-olds? It's a simple but this guy is new to the situation potentially. This is his first real game. And so that is in theory, it's the lightest form of it, but that is literally gatekeeping.
And
that is literally probably not wanting him, that comment and that gaming situation. I bet you any money Bob has not been back to a game night or played a game.
Right.
And that really does suck because where he could have enjoyed, the second playing, he'll do something more. Third playing, he'll get his feet wet more. It's a grown art. We were kind of thrown into it because we worked in board gaming more or less for a while. So it's we got into the nitty gritty of everything. And then when somebody came over who didn't understand it, it was kind of like, oh, all right, let's start slow, because even you're right. Yeah. There's some games where it's like, oh, do we need to play level 1 or can we just skip over the rule level and go to level 2 or 3,
Right. Yeah. Right. And I think also something important to point out is that this was all done over text, and that can also be it's much harder to read someone's tone. That could be read as playful or it could be read as much more harsh.
Exactly.
It's a tough line to walk.
Now, do we have ages for these two gentlemen?
I do not know Steve's age, but according to the case file, Bob is somewhere around 50 years old. So this is an older fella.
So this could also be another thing too. Is Steve?
This is a Mandy Patinkin type.
Well, yeah. Is Steve 30? Is this
I guess he's got to be at least in his 30s. I don't think this is a generational. I guess that is maybe a generational.
It is a generational thing. Yeah.
But I don't know. He could be 45. I don't know.
Right. We don't have the Steve
relative ages. Yeah. At least that I can recall. I'm ready to verdictify.
All right. Lead the way.
So
that's not a real word. That's not a word.
It is. Yeah.
Stupider.
Verdictize is more stupider than verdictify. I do a little bit take issue with Bob's actions or inaction, as the case may be in this case. I do think, it's his first time playing the game. He's new to the board game scene. Cut him a little slack. But I think that I am someone who is in favor of everybody giving it their all. And, it's also maybe incumbent upon other players to teach, but it's also incumbent upon the new player to try to learn, and you ask questions. And I understand that can be scary, but if you can, you should overcome it. And you should say, just ask for a reminder. What does this do again? Or can I see the rule book and just check a couple things to go over it for myself in my head? Because again, Camel Up is a pretty slim rule book.
Right.
It's not that big of an ask. And I have just been in situations before where players, I've been on the other end of this where I felt like, oh, this person is not, maybe I can feel like they're either not taking it seriously or they don't care or they're just not paying attention. And that can be irritating. Right. So that's where I'm a little bit caught in the middle on this. However, like I said, with the game of Camel Up specifically in this case, we got to look at the facts and not extrapolate to other anecdotal evidence. It's hearsay. It's strict from the record.
It's hearsay.
I really am struggling to envision a scenario where him doing this would really affect the game so negatively that would affect when you have 8 players at the table. I just can't imagine it being that big of a deal, other than the only person I think really it would be affecting negatively is Bob himself, is that he's probably not having a good time because that sounds really boring. But I can't fathom seeing it the other way around. And I will also, again, I'm giving Steve more credit than I think maybe you are, in that if you really break it down and step back, macro view of this, he didn't blow up. He didn't have a tantrum. He made a shitty comment online. I think there are other snobby gamers who could have handled this situation way worse and could have been way shittier about it.
Right.
So I'm not that mad at Steve, but I do think ultimately his mindset and his being annoyed, it sounds like, is almost entirely in his own head. And I don't think anyone else at the table, it sounds like, had any issues with any of this. So I am going to declare Steve guilty. But for me, it's a soft guilty.
You do have to say, I do declare.
I do declare he's a soft guilty, Your Honor.
So, I don't know if Steve...
That's me. Well, no, I'm saying it to you. We're both Your Honor.
I don't know if Steve is soft or hard.
Why don't we call each other Your Honor more? Sorry, I'm stepping on your erection, Joe.
Start. That's fine.
And
listen. If you're stepping on my erection,
okay. It all worked out, man, folks.
I have a long penis, so
Long
Steve,
and thin,
it's like a pencil. So Steve,
like a spaghetti noodle.
It's
but before you cook it,
right? That's what they called me in college.
Thanks.
So, see you next week.
Your verdict.
So my verdict. Steve, like I was saying, sure, what he said technically wasn't bad. He could have been the typical alpha gamer dick and be like, hey, what do you like? Make fun of him at the table. That comes up in so many of these stories where you hear this, especially when people are coming to our courthouse and giving us a one-sided story. This happens a lot. Usually it's somebody who thinks that, I'm so wrong, they can't, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But in that same breath, Steve should have been like, hey, do you want to do something else? You can word something without sounding shitty. You can word something without, be like, hey, you can do other things, or maybe be like, give him I don't know if it has reference cards or not in this game. I get all my games confused.
Send him the YouTube video how to play.
Right. Or check in with everyone, because I'm sure, not all 8 players were at the same level, or, even his partner that was with him be like, sup, babe, you gotta, why don't you try something else? Try to, when you bring someone to a game night, you kind of are their keeper in a way to kind of push them along, especially because they pushed him into the game. Technically.
They might be the real guilty party here.
It's true. But, Steve is the teacher. Steve is in control of this classroom, and, you have to make sure that everyone fully understands what they're doing. And maybe Bob fully understood what he was doing and just maybe wasn't in the mood to play the game, or he just liked watching the camel go around with the thing. Maybe that's his jam.
Maybe he's just bad at it.
Right. He could just be a really shitty gamer. We didn't really look into that case either. So yeah, I don't think Bob is guilty of anything, because he potentially was having a bad night. Maybe he just doesn't like Steve in general. He's like, fine, I'll play your stupid game. And we'll just, because I do get a little, Steve is a little, could have an alpha gamer touch to him. Everyone else was playing a game upstairs. He was like, hey, why don't we come downstairs and play a real game? He didn't say that, but
I didn't get that vibe from it. I think there's just so many people at the gathering that they have 2 different rooms where they play games in. But
all right. But still, he could have been much worse. But he also could have been much better. So I do think he is guilty. It's a soft guilty, but he has to learn how to be. So yeah, it trails behind me. It's soft for me too, because there is a third guilty party in the picture, or there's 7 other people at this table.
Right.
So for me, it is Steve is guilty.
But I think both of ours are soft. I think yours is a little harder than mine.
Mine's a little harder. It's been fluffed.
All right.
It's al dente.
So we've officially decided, like it or not, Steve, you could have got away with it is the thing. but you brought it to our bailiff, and we had to see it. Now you're guilty.
And I think to add on to mine, I do think the comment didn't need to be said, especially to a new fine for your general gaming group, sure, but for somebody who's like they're still trying to, one little comment like that might have been nothing to most people, but he might not ever play a game again.
That's fair.
Just to take it to a full,
nip it in the bud. Don't let the small stuff fly if it's gonna grow into something bigger. I would be more sympathetic if the comment didn't happen. That's almost a separate thing, but I just wish that he according to Steve, he says that he threw the game off, changed the dynamic, changed the timing of things, and he thought the game didn't go over well. But for me, that's not specific enough. I just don't. I just can't quite see what he's seeing, and maybe that's not fair. I wasn't there. Maybe if I were at the table, maybe it would have sucked. I don't know.
I don't think just doing that would have thrown the game off, because that is literally a legal play.
Right.
In theory, that is one of the moves that you could potentially do over and over again. That's why it's there.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to beat this dead camel too much. We've talked about it already. But we do need to punish Steve in some way. He needs to learn his lesson.
Right.
I don't want to punish him too harshly, so I think I'm going to hold off on death penalty, because I think he doesn't quite deserve that.
So you don't want trampling by 1,000 camels?
No, I don't think so. But maybe he has to be put inside of a giant life-sized pyramid with a bunch of large metal cubes and be shaken up a ton, so he's crushed against the side of it with these giant cubes and then spit out onto the floor.
I don't mean to. That's death.
Most of my punishments are jigsaw traps. That's sort of my MO. But what's your suggestion? I mean, I'm open to your suggestion.
Therapy.
That's they all get therapy.
Okay. So, yeah. So for BetterHelp, are they a sponsor?
I don't know. This is a character who he thinks that's really, when people say you should get therapy, he gets shy. That's a compliment. Really?
Oh,
I guess maybe I could get therapy. I don't know.
You think I need it?
You really think I need it, huh? Wow. Okay.
So
maybe I will.
So I think this would be a good punishment for Steve, and probably something Steve would enjoy. Yeah. But Steve has to go volunteer at a convention teaching games.
Oh, I like this. And there he learns how to be a better teacher and how to be more patient with new gamers.
Maybe it has to be in the introduction room, the new gamers room. I'm sure. I think they have those. I don't know.
Yes. Or we wipe his brain so that he can't remember how to play any games, and now he has to relearn and feel bad and stupid. And we got to hire a bunch of actors to point at him and laugh every time he makes a play. I think one of these three, or maybe all of them.
But mainly therapy for you. And a great way that you can pay for therapy for Jonathan is by going to our Patreon.
You're jumping out of order. There's an order. You're out of order, I say.
Literally, I am.
Because first we got to tell the people that they can email us, geeksontrial@gmail.com. If you have a thought, are you more of a Steve or you're more of a Bob in this case? Do you feel this is a guilty or non-guilty verdict? Where do you land? And you can submit your own geeky case. Do you have a dispute from a game night? I think they come up fairly often in the board game world, or it could be some other geeky subculture. Email us what it is. We'll put it on the show. We'll use fake names. Don't worry. We're not going to out you or anything like that.
Right.
We'd love to hear from you.
And like I said, if you want to help support the show, head on over to patreon.com/geeksontrial. That's where you can get early access to both our audio and video episodes, and Geeks on Trial Sidebar, which is our brand new show that comes out twice a month, bi-monthly, every other week. And you can get that there exclusively at patreon.com/geeksontrial. It's only $5 a month. And all that money, most of that money comes to us.
Most of it goes to my therapy bills.
Right.
Good stuff. Good stuff, everybody. Man.
Where can people find you when you're not in therapy?
Oh, wow. When I'm not in therapy, I have my own form of therapy. It's called the creative arts. That's what I call it.
It's true.
That's what I call it.
You can get an Emmy about that.
Sure. What does that stand for? I always wondered.
Creative Arts?
No, ME. They're always talking about getting an ME, and I'm like, a man.
Well, listen. The best thing is the word MC. You could spell it out. MC is MC. That's talking about the English language.
We don't need to right now. If you want to follow me on the internet, you can. I'm on that Blue Sky. Wow, I post there like once every 2 weeks at Jonathan Estes. That's my name. It's also the name of my website, jonathanestes.com. You can find my other podcast, YouTube videos, and more fun stuff there. How about you, buddy?
You can find me all over the internet. All of my socials are right next to my beautiful face right here. And you can head over to the Snack Guy. That's youtube.com/the Snack Guy. There's no @ there. I got in early, so it's just youtube.com/the Snack Guy, where I go review snacks.
Bragging.
Oh, I love the bragging. That's what I do on the Snack Guy.
It's weird the way you said it.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, everybody check it all out, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Thanks for watching or listening if you're on a YouTube or a podcast. Either way, we're your friend and your family, and we're happy you joined us. I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Ivan Hahn, and this has been Geeks on Trial. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button.
Only if you're on YouTube.